Hello. All right, let's see. Good afternoon. I'm gonna give everyone a couple of minutes to get situated and settled down. I think a lot of people are going to be watching the recording of this afterwards. So hello to everyone who's joining me live and to everyone who will be watching this afterwards. So I'll give everyone some time to get out everything that they need. So you will want to pull out your pink art kit, and we are going to make sure we have everything that we need before we get started. So I've got a rag. You can also use a paper towel. This will be for drying off your brushes. I have a couple of different size brushes we're going to be using today. I've got my big flat brush for the background. This angle brush will be helpful for the grass and our flowers, and same with this little tiny brush. That'll be good for outlining and excuse me, and filling in our hummingbirds. We also have some stars, and you'll notice that that bag, it's kind of a silvery color, and it has a little star design drawn on it. And you'll want to have either an old brush, two brushes, a toothbrush actually works really well for that, but I'll explain that when we get to that point. I also have a cup of water here to wash my brushes off. You'll want a paper plate, or you could use wax paper, something that's going to hold your paint nicely. And you'll want to pull out your little tracer. It should be rolled up with a little elastic band around it. You want to unroll that and let it lay flat. You kind of crease it a little bit if you need to, if it feels like it's going to be really, really rolly. So we'll set that to the side for now. Now you can see when I held up my plate, it's a little hard to tell with the lighting in here, but this orange color we're gonna start out with, and our blue. So I'll let you guys get all your supplies out, everything that you need. And we'll wanna have a pencil handy for when we go to make our tracer and trace our birds in. All right. So when we begin this painting today, you'll notice there's a little white streak right here in between our yellowish orange and our blue. Now, the reason that we put that white streak in there, and we're gonna have to be pretty careful when we go in today to do it, because orange and blue, when you mix them together, they kind of turn this greenish brown, and you guys know that yellow and blue make green. So unless you want green streaks in your sky, it'll kind of look like, noxious gas or something. We want to make sure we're keeping those two colors separate, our blue and our orangish yellow, separated with that white. So I'll show you how to do that. But just to give you guys a little bit of a heads up for that part, I just wanted to explain that now. So hopefully you guys can all see. Let me move my little tab here. Awesome. I've got my blank canvas here. I'll be painting along with you guys today, and our example right back here. So you can keep referring back and forth between those two things. And like I said, I'll be painting along so no one gets left behind. So we are going to start today, let's start with our orange. We want to let our sky start to dry up before we put our black in, so that we don't wind up with some orangish black streaks in our birds. And we also want to wait to put our tracer on until our background is pretty dry, because this piece of paper can end up pulling off some of your paint, and we don't want to do that. So I'm going to start with my orange. And you can start right at the bottom of your canvas and work about halfway up before we start going in with the blue, and then we'll come in with some yellow. So you can go ahead and get started. Now you'll kind of notice that the sky is a little bit slanted, right? It's not completely back and forth like I've got going on right now. So as we start working up, you'll want to start dragging your brush more up at a diagonal angle. Now, I don't know if you can see, but I left a little bit of a white line at the bottom of my canvas. That way I know it'll be nice and dry when we go in with our black. But it's up to you whether you want to fill the orange all the way to the bottom or leave it like that. Just make sure you get all the way over to the edges. Notice I'm starting to kind of swoop my orange up towards the top right of my canvas. Just like this. This orange is really nice. It's really bright, so you don't need to use a whole lot You just want to make sure any little dots in your canvas are covered so you can kind of see I'm taking my brush and just very carefully patting it a little bit and then smoothing it out. And I'm going to come up just a little bit higher with this orange, just like that. And I know I just said we're going to use blue next, but I changed my mind. I think we'll use some yellow. So you can go ahead and get your brush either cleaned off or just dried off. We're going to be blending some of the yellow into the orange anyways, so it doesn't have to be super clean. And I'm going to pull out some of my yellow. We didn't give you too much because there's really not a whole lot of yellow in this one. It just kind of helps make a little bit of a highlight. So I dried my brush off. Especially if you washed it in your water, you want to make sure you really dry your brush off well. We're using acrylic paint today, and acrylic paint, when it gets wet, it starts to get runny, and we don't want drips going down our canvas, right? It kind of thins the paint out. So we're going to go in with the yellow, and I'm going to start above the orange a little bit, leaving a little bit of white space in there so that it doesn't start blending on us right away. So I'm going to go in probably just, and you can see there's a little bit of orange streaking in there. That's okay, that'll make it look really nice. We just need one skinny line. And now I'm gonna come down. I might put a little extra orange on my brush just to make it a little bit more blended. And we're gonna go right along that line. You don't wanna work it too much. You don't wanna go back and forth and blend it all together. We do wanna leave it a little bit streaky. You could even take a little bit of yellow if you want and pull it down further. And because we have some big lights on, the heat's cranked up in here, and I've got a fan on in the corner, my orange is already starting to dry up, which is really good, unless you want to try to go back in and put more paint down there. We don't want to do that. Same kind of idea as with our tracer. When your when your canvas and your paintings start to dry, what can happen is your brush will actually pull some of that paint off of your canvas, and you're going to be left with some white spots. And it's going to get frustrating. You'll feel maybe a little bit of friction, a little bit of a pull on your brush. That's how you know that your painting is starting to dry, and you probably want to hands off for a little bit and let it dry all the way. So now you do want to make sure your brush is really, really, really nice and clean. So I'm going to spin it around my water. I'll let it drip a couple of times, do it again. We just want to make sure that we're getting all that extra orange out so that our blue doesn't end up with some brown streaks in it. All right, so I'll let you guys have a couple of seconds to get your brushes all nice and clean. I'm gonna dry it off really well. And now here is the part that we want to make sure we're really, really careful about. We want to pull down this blue, but not too far. We're really going to be blending more of that white in there. And hopefully our yellow will start to dry up so that we don't end up with too much green kind of pulling up into our sky. So I'm going to take my blue, and I'm going to come all the way across the top here. If you're using an easel, you might want to lift up the little holder here. I'm going to screw it in back here so it doesn't fall on me, just so that you don't miss the top of your canvas. I'm going to keep it nice and skinny on the right, and we're going to make it a little bit wider here on the left. Just like that. Now I'm going to move my easel back down so it doesn't slide all over the place. We want to leave a good bit of blank canvas space here so that when we go in with the white, we have enough room and we're not getting too close into our yellow. So I do want to wash my brush off a little bit. We'll be blending a little bit of white in there, but just get it a little bit cleaner. I'm going to pull out my little bottle of white. You don't need too much. We'll be using some later to go in and add a little bit of, kind of looks like wind going through these little, or clouds, right? Wispy clouds, these little white streaks. We'll use our little brush. So we do want to save some. We don't want to use all our white up. So I'm gonna go in, and I think it's going to be easiest if we start very carefully. I'm gonna turn this a little bit so it's easier for me, and then I'll show you. If we start right along the top of our yellow line so that we don't have to worry about the blue coming down too far. So I'm just going to very carefully, and if you get a little bit of white, yellow streaked into your white, that's okay. We'll just wash our brush off before we go in with any more white. You can kind of see, it's a little tricky to see because it's white on white, but you guys get the idea, hopefully. So now I'm gonna just dry my brush off, get any extra yellow out of there, and we're going to come right along this line. Now, I didn't put too much blue up here, so you might want to take just a tiny little bit on your brush underneath some white, and that'll help to make it really nice and streaky. Really nice. If you feel like it is starting to turn too green for you right in here, I think I did an okay job keeping my colors separate, but we'll just wait for the background to dry all the way, and you can very carefully go in along that line if you feel like it's really bothering you, but hopefully it looks just like this. So it's up to you how much white you want to streak in there. I think I'm going to put a little bit more blue back in up here. Just like that. So when you're finished, you're gonna take your brush and go ahead and get it nice and clean. You can either leave it in your water or you can wash it off thoroughly and set it to the side. You do want to, after our class is finished, you do want to make sure you wash it with soap and water. What can happen is your brushes get crusty, the paint dries on them, and then it makes it hard to use. Luckily with acrylic paint, it's pretty easy to let them soak afterwards if they do get a little bit of paint dried on there, and then you can wash them. If we were using oil paint, it's a totally different story. If you don't wash your oil paint brushes, you might not be able to use them ever again. So just a good tip to know, always wash your brushes. They're like fish, right? They like to be in the water. So I'll give everyone a couple of minutes to get all caught up. Hopefully our paintings are starting to dry out, especially in our orange, but we are going to take a little bit of a break from painting once everyone's all set and make our tracers. So I'm just going to slightly turn my canvas if I can get it past the table, just like this. Awesome. All right. Give everyone just a few more minutes. If you are super speedy and you're already finished, you can go ahead and take out your tracer. Now, you'll notice there is a Sharpie line on one side and the other side is blank. So we want to make sure that the side with the Sharpie faces the table. And I'm going to move my camera down just a little bit so you guys can see on the table here. I'm going to line it up just to make sure. And you'll notice that on the tracer, they're a little bit closer together than they are on the painting, so you will want to trace them separately, but I'll show you that in a couple of minutes. We still need to put some graphite, some pencil on the backs of our tracers. So we want to make sure that they're facing the right way, although this tracer doesn't have any words on it, right? So you can kind of make your birds however you would like. I'm going to do it the same way that's in our example up here. Awesome. So what you want to do is take the side of your pencil and we're going to do some shading. Now we don't want to cover the whole back of our tracer in pencil. That'll get really messy, you get it all over your hands, and you still probably will get some on your hands doing this. So you want probably to have either a towel or maybe a wet wipe around to get some of that extra pencil off your hands so we don't streak it, especially up into our light colors up in the sky. So I'm going to take the side of my pencil and very carefully go right around the edge of all the lines that you see. I'll hold it back a little further. All the lines you see on your birds, basically just re-outlining those birds. if you're finishing up your background, you might want to, I mentioned I have a fan running in the background, you might want to put it in the window or next to a heater or a fan or something to help it dry up just a little bit more quickly. Make sure you go around all the little feathers. Just like that. And we're gonna set that to the side. And I know some of you might not be finished quite yet, so we'll just keep going. And I'll set this to the side. There we go. All right, my orange is starting to dry really nicely. It still looks like the blue up in the sky is a little bit wet, but that's okay because we are going to do some stars next. So I'll give everyone a couple more minutes to get all caught up. The good thing is if you're watching the recording from home, you can pause it and you won't get stuck behind. So you guys have little bags with the little star logo on it. I'm gonna use our pre-made mix here. So you'll probably want to very carefully, you'll notice that this paint in the star bag is a lot more runny, a lot more liquidy, and that's because we actually did put some water in it. It helps make it a little bit looser and a little bit easier to make our stars. And I'll show you two techniques how to make these stars up in the sky. You can either use one brush if you only have one, or if you have two, you can do it that way as well. It's really up to you. So you'll want to, as I was saying, sorry, about how liquidy the paint is, you'll probably want to get a little paper Dixie cup or just a plastic cup of sorts. It's really easy to wash out afterwards so that you can pour it in there so it doesn't run into all your other colors on your plate. I'm just going to take it straight out of the bottle. My brushes are really nice and clean and dry, so no worries there. All right, so to make our stars, I'm gonna get my bristles nice and wet. And I'm gonna let some of the extra paint drip off of it so that we don't wind up with big splotches on our canvas. Now the first technique, you're gonna get your finger a little bit dirty, but that's okay. We're gonna take, now we wanna make sure that our stars aren't coming down too far into our sky, right? Into our orange sunset here. It's just staying up in our top left corner for the most part. So to do that, I'm gonna face my brush right towards the canvas. I'm gonna take my finger. Now, if you're doing this in an easel, this might be a good time to take your canvas out of your easel and lay it flat on the table so that if you accidentally end up with too much paint on your brush, it won't end up running and dripping and look like, you know, just paint dripping instead of stars. I'm gonna do it up here. I think my paint is thick enough that I don't have to worry about it running too much. So I'm gonna take my brush in my painting hand and use my other hand. I'm gonna take just one finger and very carefully spray some paint on the canvas. Now, if you want, it's hard to see because they're really tiny, but if you want some larger stars, what you can do, take another brush. These are really old, kind of beat up brushes, so we don't care about them so much. This is their only job here at the studio. So be careful if you're using some brand new brushes of your own. You don't want to break anything, right? I'm gonna very carefully just tap right up in this corner. Now this is a part where I think I will have to lay my canvas down a little bit. It's gonna be a little trickier. Go right here like this. And we're gonna take a little bit more paint. And you want to take the brush with the paint on it in your painting hand, drawing hand, whatever you call it, dominant hand, and the other brush in your other hand. This one is just going to stay still, and you're going to tap with the one with the paint on it, just very carefully. just like that. And then, oh, did I get some? No, good. You can see right up there, some little twinkly stars. Excellent. Give you guys some time to make some stars. And then we'll do, I think I'll let everyone's canvases dry up just a little bit more. So we'll do some grass down here next. So I'm gonna pull out my black, and you can do the same when you're ready. We don't want to use up all the black down here, right? Because we still need it to fill in our birds and our sunflower and that sort of thing. So I'll move this camera back up. You can see my canvas a little bit easier. And I'll give you guys some time to get ready for our next step. If you're not sure if your canvas is dry yet, take 2 fingers and very, very gently touch your canvas. You don't want to accidentally leave some fingerprints. And except for some white spots up here on mine is pretty dry. Hopefully yours are drying up pretty quickly at home as well. But we're gonna give them a little bit more time by taking some black. I'm going to use my angle brush for this step. If you would prefer, you can use a little detail brush if you feel like it'll be easier. This one's pretty long, right? And I'm gonna make some hills down where I left, remember I left some white down here, so we'll wanna fill that in, but I'm going to come up into my orange just a little bit. You guys can't really see that, so let me slide back. Awesome. So we're going to make just a couple of little hills in here. It'll just make the painting a little bit more interesting than just a flat ground. And mine is looking a little bit angular, so I'm going to go back and just touch that up when I'm finished outlining. And we are going to be adding some grass on top, so that's okay. Fill in, make sure you get all the way to the edge. And you might need to lift up your canvas just a little bit if you're using an easel to get the very bottom here. Just like that. So when you've got your ground, hills, whatever you want to call it, filled in down here, we can either take a little brush or keep using an angle brush, whichever one you prefer. And I'll show you how to make some grass. We will wait a couple minutes to put in our little flowers here. Oh, you can't really see there it is, a little sunflower right here. We'll wait on that one until we put our birds up into the sky, just to give the bottom some time to dry up. But I'm gonna take now, I'll have to kind of slide this a little bit because the angle doesn't work so well. But we're gonna start right down in the black and just very carefully. Now my brush, I'm holding it. If you're using this angle brush, you can see that the long bristles are facing the ground and the shorter ones are facing the sky. That's going to help keep our grass nice and skinny and stop it from turning too square using it the other way. So it's up to you. I'm gonna do some tufts of grass over here. It's up to you how much grass you want to add in. Turn it a little bit and I'll turn it back around, no worries. Just a couple of seconds. Make some of your grass a little bit longer, a little bit shorter, because unless you're painting your lawn, all the grass is probably a little bit different in height, because that's how it grows naturally without a lawnmower. There we go. So we'll let you all get some of your grass filled in here. And hopefully, by the time you're finished, the sky will be totally dry and we'll be able to do our tracers. I'm gonna start getting set up for my tracers. If you're still working on the grass, I'll move this a little closer so you can see it right back here. I'm gonna take my canvas out of my easel and I'm gonna lay it down so that the black that I just added in is facing away from me. Might be a little bit confusing, but luckily our tracers are pretty easy to see. Let everyone get all set up. We're gonna do our tracer now. So you want to have a pencil ready. Make sure the pencil's not too sharp because, and we don't want to push down too hard on our canvas. We're gonna do the same idea that we did when we shaded it in. We're gonna use the side of the pencil. If you push down too hard and your pencil's too sharp, you can end up with a hole in your canvas, and that would be a shame. So we don't want holy canvases, right? Or ripping our tracer, you know, make it a little bit easier on ourselves. All right. So as I was saying before, the tracers that we have here, so that they would fit really nice and easily on a nice little square like this, we put them a little bit closer together than they are in here. So it's up to you if you want them to be really close or a little bit farther away. It's really up to you. Trace one, and then you're gonna slide one way or the other. We just don't want them overlapping, right? That would be kind of confusing. So I'm gonna put mine right about here, and I think this one I'll put a little bit lower. Be very careful that your canvas is dry where you're putting down your tracer. I can show you a way to get it off if it's a little bit sticky and you're nervous. You just go really nice and slow and kind of wiggle it, but I'll show you that. So yep, my sky is all nice and dry. You want to very carefully lay your hand on your canvas. It might be easier if you have a table or something next to you to lean your elbow against, just so that it you don't end up denting your canvas with your hand if you're pushing down too hard. So I'm gonna start with this one, the bird with just the, you can see its wings are folded kind of behind its back. The one on the top of my tracer. And you want to make sure you're going around every line so that all those lines end up on our canvas. If you feel like you might have forgot or you're not sure if you went over all the lines, these are really nice small tracers. Just go right back over it before you move your tracer off of your canvas. That way you don't have to try to figure out how it's lined up. So I'm gonna very carefully, see how I'm kind of wiggling it back and forth so that I don't pull off any paint. Nice. And you can see, there's my first little bird. It doesn't have to be a perfect outline. You can see my wings are a little bit faded, but as long as you can see most of those details, it'll be easy enough to go in with your little paintbrush and fill them in. I'm gonna do my second bird, probably right just a little bit below the one I just did. This one's a little trickier. It's got more feathers on its wings. That's okay. Awesome. So your bird should look something like this. And I trace pretty quickly, so I'll give everyone some time to get their birds traced in. Now, I put my canvas back up in my easel. I would recommend leaving it flat on the table to do your outlining and filling in the birds. I think it'll just make it a little bit easier for you guys who are working at home. So before we fill in our birds with black, I didn't forget about our little wispy clouds. I almost did. We're gonna take some of our leftover white, and it's up to you where you'd like to put them. I'm gonna put some down here and maybe a couple up higher in the sky. Maybe make some go off the edge of the canvas a little bit like this. We'll make it look just a little bit more realistic, more whimsical. Try to make them all go the same direction up this way. And if you feel like they're too heavy, like there's too much white, just go back over it and kind of smooth it out. And it will end up drying darker if you can think about white being darker. I know it doesn't make a lot of sense, but it'll fade, I guess is really a better way of saying that. It'll fade kind of to match the color of the canvas behind it. It'll just be a little bit lighter. You can kind of see back here, like this streak that I just added in looks really, really bright, but hopefully it'll fade down to a little bit less of a bright white color. Do maybe one here, another one right in between our little birds. Nice. So you want to go ahead and get your white cleaned off so that we don't wind up with gray birds. Now the reason that our birds are in black is because it's a silhouette. It's just the outline, right? So if you're looking, at a bird flying through the sky, especially at night where the sun's kind of glowing up over the horizon, all you're really going to see is a black outline. That's why we didn't go in with colors and that sort of thing, especially if it's kind of in the distance like this. So I've got my black on my little brush here. Now, we do definitely want to make sure we're either using a little script brush like this. It's got kind of longer bristles. You can't really see that, that's so light. Or just a nice little detail brush. Especially for their little beaks, we don't want to start at the end of the beak and work in. We're going to start maybe on his head and go up the beak the other way so that it stays nice and skinny. A good way to make your brush skinny, if you feel like you can kind of see there's a lot of paint on there and it looks a little bit blobby, we're going to take the side of our plate and the side of our brush. We're going to give it just a little twirl, and that'll help to kind of spin those bristles together and make it nice and twisted up. So very carefully, this is why I suggested laying your canvas flat on the table. I've got to kind of prop my elbow up, or maybe just very gently press on the side of my canvas. And I'm going to start filling in my birds. I'll flip the canvas back towards you guys so you can see, but you can follow right along here. We want to outline first and then fill in. That'll just save us from accidentally going outside of the lines while we're filling in. And it'll just be easier to tell. So I'm going to go right over the pencil line. We want to make sure we cover that up. Just like this. Very carefully around our feathers. Those might be a little bit tricky. So just go nice and slowly. I'm going to save the beak for last.
All right, well, if you're ready to go, I'm going to come get you so you can come back and see what I do. I'm coming to get you. Yeah.
All right. Got my first bird almost filled. And then you can kind of see my outline looks a little bit like a crow right now, so we need to add in that nice long beak. Now I am going to upgrade to my script brush. Hopefully it'll be easier for you guys doing it flat on your tables. I'm going to use an even skinnier brush to get that filled in. Awesome. Just like that. And I'm gonna go in very carefully to my other bird. It doesn't really matter which bird you start with. It actually might be easier to do the top one and then the bottom one, but it's up to you. Very carefully around the head. Same idea, I'm gonna switch to my skinny brush for the beak. Just like that. So I'll let everyone have a couple of minutes to very carefully fill those in, and then we'll get started on our last step, which is gonna be our little flowers. All right. So hopefully you guys are finishing up your outlines and filling in your little birds. Luckily, they're not too large, so it shouldn't take too much longer. And it's up to you which brush you'd like to use. You can use an angle brush like we did for the grass, or a nice skinny detail brush to go in and do our little flowers. So for our big sunflower right here in the corner, you want to start same kind of way that you started the grass, and I think I am going to pull my canvas down and lay it on the table here in front of me. Kind of prop it up like this. So it might be easier to flip it around the way that I have it, so that the sky is up against you and the grass is down here. We're gonna start, there we go. We're gonna start right inside the black so that we don't accidentally end up with a flower that's kind of hovering up above our horizon. And I'm going to very carefully, hopefully you can see that, pull up from the bottom. Now we want to try to make it get skinnier as we go up. So that's how trees and flowers grow. They start off a little bit wider at the base, and then they get skinny as they go up. So it's up to you. I think I'm going to leave mine about that tall, maybe a little bit taller. But if you want yours to be really nice and tall, you can do that. Now for our leaves, you're going to take your brush and just make two little outlines, and you can fill it in. Just like that. Now, for the top of the sunflower, the actual flower, right? I'm going to make a little circle right on the top of my stem, and I'm going to very carefully add, it's almost the same technique that we did for the leaves. And there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We have 9 on here. It's up to you how many petals you'd like to add. I'm going to try to stick with the amount that we have on our example. So I've got my little base of the flower where all the sunflower seeds are, right there. And very carefully, I'm going to add all the little petals in. This one's looking a little bit smaller than the one behind me, but that's okay. You might notice that some of your petals are longer than others, so if you stay smaller, it's always easier to make something a little bit bigger, especially when you're using black paint, than it is to make them smaller. So start small, and that way, if you need to, you can upsize those petals. It's a lot trickier to erase paint than it is to add more. You can go in and just touch up, like I'm doing. Make this one a little bit longer. Now I got my little sunflower here. You probably want to take a look at it like this. I now notice that this flower up here needs to be a little bit longer. Always good to take a step back from your artwork every once in a while so that you can see. Because if you think about it, when you go to a museum, unless you're someone like me who likes to get really up close to the artwork, art is meant to be viewed from a couple feet away, from a distance, right? People aren't going to be, you know, like I said, unless you're like me, really looking at your painting. So it's always important to hold your painting off to the side a little bit so that you can get a good idea of what it would look like if you have it hung on the wall. So I've got my little sunflower there. Now these are little dandelions on either side. So I'm gonna take my skinny brush again. Now we want to make these really, really skinny. And there's about 3 stems and 3 dandelions on each side of the hill here. So I'm gonna start over here. 1, 2, 3. And I'll do the stems on the other side while I'm at it. 1, oops, 2, and 3. It's up to you how long you'd like them. I'm gonna keep mine about this size here. Now we're gonna take our little detail brush again. And this time we don't want very much paint on it. I'm just going to very, very barely get any kind of paint on there. And very, very gently, I'm going to go right on the tops and kind of just tap it in. Just give it a little bit of fuzz. I'm really not pushing down on the canvas at all, and just sort of letting the paint come off the brush. So I'll let everyone have some time to finish up, and after your flowers are done, our last step is going to be to take a little bit of our white. We're going to can put your last name. We usually do our initials here at the studio. So I'm going to put HAS for Hammar's Art Studio, and maybe date it 2020, if you'd like, right here in this corner, or the other corner, whichever one you'd like. Awesome. So I'll let everyone have some more time to finish up. This is a nice quick painting. There's not too many colors, and it looks really, really nice when you're finished with it. So when you are all finished, you will want to, got all my brushes in my cup here. I'm going to, as soon as I'm finished with this video, I'm gonna go over to the sink and get them all nice and clean and lay them out to dry. You can go ahead and toss your paint palette in the trash. You might want to fold it in half so it doesn't get all over everything. And you are more than welcome to save your little tracer. This one's a really nice one that you could put it on a drawing or another painting or something like that. It's very helpful to, kind of like training wheels, gives you just a little bit of an outline so you don't have to freehand. All right. So it's looking like mine's all finished. Hopefully you guys at home are finishing up with yours. If you have any questions, please just unmute yourself and let me know. I'll answer anything that you guys need, any comments. I know there's not too many folks watching live right now, so I hope everyone who tunes into our recording enjoys and has a really great time painting along with me. If you have any questions about the painting while you're working on it, give us an email and we'll try to get back to you about it. And hopefully I was very clear on all the steps that we did here. If you guys enjoyed, it would be really awesome to see all, everyone's finished work. So if you would like to send us an email with a photograph of you and your painting or just your painting, that would be awesome. We'll put a little collage together and everyone will be able to see it. And we have a whole bunch more of these coming up for the next week and next week as well for our school vacation weeks. So we would love to see you guys on here again and join us for another one. So, and we actually just started to do some shipping orders. So we've been doing safe curbside pickup, but we're also offering shipping. So if you have any relatives or any friends who don't live around here who would like to paint along with you guys, it's kind of a fun little painting play date. If you have cousins who live far away, we are offering shipping for all of our painting events that we're doing. So that would be a really fun way to see some cousins or friends who live far away during all of this, where we're really just talking face to face on computer screens. So that would be really awesome. And I hope you guys had a really great time. I know it's a little bit more relaxing to go in and do a painting. You don't have to worry about schoolwork for a little while. So I hope yours turned out really nice and you guys had a great time doing it. Like I said, please send us pictures of your finished products. We love to see them here at the studio. And if there's no further questions for me from our live folks right now, I'm going to get going and set up for my drawing class that I've got going on after this. So I hope everyone has a great rest of your day, a great rest of the week, and hopefully we'll see you guys tuned in on another one. So have a great rest of your week, as I said, and hopefully we'll see you guys all soon, either online or hopefully, fingers crossed, in the studio really soon. So have a great rest of your day. I will talk to you guys later. Have a great, I just said that 3 times. Have a great rest of your day again.